Part of the 1915 winter turn. I'm just looking at the options for card play for the Central Powers. First I'm looking at the contingency cards, and then I'll look at the weapons and tactics cards. They can take one of these and then one campaign card. So that's the first thing to notice. It's very different from a card-driven game in which you only have 2 cards per turn. Not in a card-driven game, you've normally got, like a hand of 8 cards per turn or season or round, which is driving everything that you do. Here, it's 2 choices you're going to make, and the rest is just normal sort of I go, you go movement and maneuver. Anyway, let's have a look at the choices. So these are the sort of less interesting choices over here on the left. Storm the Winter Palace only happens if there's a Red Revolution happening. The America situation is just to counter any encouragement from the Entente on America joining. Peace negotiations we only want to do if we think we're losing, or perhaps we're offering the other side a way out. Colonial campaign is basically roll a d6, and on a 2 no effect, on a 1 it's bad for us, and for the rest it's something good relating to morale adjustments either to us or the Entente. So that's always going to be a good play. Slight risk, but good play generally for Central Powers. But of course, because we can only do 1 every turn stroke season, we're going to have to think. The other thing that I'm thinking about is either an ultimatum or diplomacy. Now, these are both ways of getting a minor nation onto your side. Ultimatum is where you stick a load of units on their border and say join us or else. The risk of that is that they might join the other side, but either way they're not a neutral any longer, which might be what you wanted. Diplomacy is more likely. I think slightly more likely to get them onto your side, but it's this one is more affected by the troops that you have. So diplomacy, they might join you or they might not. And I'm thinking of asking Bulgaria to join the Central Powers now. That will enable them to help Austro-Hungary against the Serbians, and also it might enable them to join up with the Ottomans to force an ultimatum against Romania, which if they come to our side, or even, I don't know, we might be able to try an alliance with them next. The point is to open up, to widen the Russian front, which will greatly help, again, Austro-Hungary. And they are going to need some help when essentially Italy joins. Now, normally in the game, Bulgaria automatically join, and also Romania automatically join at in those seasons. But it's a bit unstated in the rules, but it's mentioned in the table for diplomacy. You can, at your option, have it as a variable thing rather than a determined thing. So join these according to play of the diplomacy card. Otherwise, it's, we could sort of ask Belgium or the Netherlands to join us, but I think the odds are against us for that. So that's looking at the options for the Central Powers. And the other thing is the weapons and tactics. So here what we have is tank brigades, tank corps and shock troops, which are all good for like infiltration tactics, moving through zones of control, but they cost a lot of industrial points, 40, 40 and 40, and you can see there's only a slight success on the tank brigades and slight chance of success. So that's kind of quite a costly endeavour. It may be better to mobilise more troops before we do that. The other thing is to, again, very costly targeting calculators, slight success. That would raise our naval and air attacks. Not that we have any air attacks possible yet. So we could raise air doctrine, which the Entente have already done. And we could go for poison gas. No, that is a tempting option. Poison gas, because I'm not fully sure what that will do, but that's going to help us against all these entrenchments. So I don't know, it's either between poison gas then, I think, or Bulgaria. I will check the air doctrines as well, because it might betoken us to raise that. Now I'm just pondering the usefulness of ultimatum v diplomacy, because on a 5 or a 6 the unit will capitulate, which is what you want. Counter declarations, they go to the other side. Now the Entente have a high morale, they would get +1, providing they have this modifier +1 of many forces on the border, they'll get +2. Now if we go to the diplomacy table, you want alliance, which is on a 5 or a 6, also of course higher than that as well, and we get the same modifiers, +1, and then if it's Bulgaria, +1. So that's probably what it is. The difference is in +1 for Bulgaria. So normally for an alliance you would just get +1 for having high morale, and there's a modifier for it being United States, Bulgaria, Romania. So other nations, you're more likely to go for the ultimatum by massing units on their border, because that will give you an extra +1. So yeah, there's no point in making an ultimatum against Bulgaria. Odds are the same. Diplomacy would make sense. So what that's saying essentially is that Romania favours the Entente, Bulgaria the Central Powers, so you would try for alliance with them via diplomacy, whereas the Netherlands and then places like Japan and so forth, which have units that could potentially join the Entente, you can't, the Central Powers can't force an ultimatum off map. So what could they do? Maybe force an ultimatum on Denmark, but then it doesn't do anything unless, would it then, because then they wouldn't have neutral waters, they're protective. So maybe Persia. But why? Why would we need an ultimatum against them? I don't really see. There's these two neutral nations, but we can enter them at the start of the game. Normally you can't enter neutral nations. And then there's Switzerland, but there's a -3 on an ultimatum attempt against Switzerland. It's not easily frightened, so I don't see so much use. Okay, there is Greece. Perhaps that's what it comes down to. That takes a bit of pondering. And looking at the air doctrine level, what we have is that the Entente can now offer offensive ground support using the ground attack table. So that's here. At the moment, the air units are quite weak. I'm just trying to locate one with bombardment factors equal to 1. So so you might equal chance of losing your unit or forcing an enemy unit to retreat. So yeah, if they built up the air power, I don't think that's going to be that great for the Central Powers at the moment then. Which leaves us with the poison gas option. Now for that we have to have the card, we have to play a campaign card, and we have to have gas points. So I could fulfill one of those requirements at this point and the rest later, or I could do those first. But it won't be useful anyway this season, so maybe I want something that's going to be useful this season. Essentially that would give us a roll on the poison gas table. It's either backfire effective or very effective. Get some modifiers. The first use you get +1, so the first person to do it. Retreat all entrenched defenders, or effective retreat or entrench 1 defending land unit. So that is great against entrenched. So there's a bit of a arms race there to get that poison gas out. Decision. Okay, we do want to go ahead on the poison gas to get a march on the Entente with that as the Central Powers, but on the other hand, also if we open up Bulgaria, it means the Ottomans can move in on this front. That's providing they can it'll be a while anyway before the Brits get over there. So we do want to do something about either Serbia or Russia, and there's quite a reasonable chance they get them, the Bulgarians, joining, so I think that we're going to go for that, the diplomacy contingency card. Now the Entente have the same weapons and tactics cards choices, as well as convoys, but they cannot bring that in until the Central Powers have brought unrestricted submarine warfare. So the Entente are looking at poison gas to try and break the deadlock on the Western Front. But they also have a bigger choice in contingency cards. America's situation, that's not... that can't happen until 1917. Kitchener takes charge. Now that will give us more units mobilised. So that's sort of interesting. Allied minor powers table, that is to bring places like Japan, Brazil, Spain or Portugal onto our side. Again, that's just going to bring some extra units, so sort of similar effect as the Kitchener table. And then there's 14 points, and that is which 14 points is to do with America, so we wouldn't use that yet. And that one is good for psychological warfare attacks, so that would be handy if we don't have anything else pressing. But I think at the moment they're going to be going for poison gas, and since we don't have any campaign cards this season, those are the only two cards played for winter 1915. So the Central Powers are playing their diplomacy card in the Grand Diplomacy phase. They have a +2 modifier. They're looking for a 5 or higher. Oh dear, they got a 1, which goes up to 3, is no effect. Okay, that was unfortunate. But that card is never discarded, so they get a chance to play that again. So now we go to the psychological warfare phase. So the Entente have elected to put all 5 of their agents in propaganda, which means they have you can always lose one agent on a 1 at least, and possible reaction where the benefit goes to the opponent, but the rest of the time they either get... there's always at the 1 or 2 on the d6 you're going to get a negative result. So on a 1 for propaganda there would be no effect for you, but the agent, the other side will... the friendly player rolls 1 die and subtract, so you would get morale loss of 1d6 on a 1 or a 2. The rest of the time they're going to roll 2 dice and add that to their morale. So that's great. And the Central Powers have opted to put half of their fellows in espionage and half in subversion. Now for the espionage, it's the same thing on a 1 or a 2. On a 1 or 2, on a 1 I would have to eliminate one of those agents, and on a 1 or a 2 also the enemy would get to examine all my forces on the map, so something bad happened in the Secret Service. But the rest of the time the Central Powers will get to check the strategy card that the Entente are playing in the spring term before choosing their own. And that is going to be very powerful, because then we will know if they are planning an offensive on one front and can obviously plan to thwart that. And for the subversion, if it goes our way, we get to roll to subtract 1d6 from the enemy morale. Or we might even get to place a guerrilla unit, but not with that many agents. If we only had 4 agents or less, there'd be a chance that we just get to place a guerrilla unit in an enemy country, which could be very helpful because you could place it on one of their industrial cities and cause some problems. You know, we think about putting that in Great Britain so that they would have to send a whole corps just to put down one guerrilla up nuisance. So rolling for the Entente's propaganda first, because it's 1915, we have one left shift, so we're on the 4 agent column. I rolled a 4, and that's PW1. Friendly player rolls 1 die and adds the result to their morale. So I'm going to put 5 onto there. So back home propaganda is working well. Okay, so we'll roll for the Central Powers subversion. Let's do that first, seeing as the table's here. So enemy morale is high, no enemy morale average. Okay, so we just straight roll. I rolled a 5, excellent, that's PW2. So here we roll 1 die and subtract it from the enemy morale. 2. Okay, so that counted some of the propaganda. 1, 2. Okay, and then the other one, the espionage roll, we got a 6, which is PW2. Any shifts? Enemy morale. Okay. So yes, so we can check one of their strategy cards. Fantastic. And now we go to the operations phases. There will only be one operational impulse for both sides on all fronts this turn. So the Central Powers have reorganised their units. They've sent more. For the Ottomans it doesn't mean much. They've got an entrenched unit here. They sent more down to join them there. They sent a unit into Basra. Oh no, that was already there. Sorry, they sent the headquarters across here. It has the halt on the slow Ottoman rail there. They sent a German headquarters over here. They have bolstered Gallipoli, and they're forming up a cavalry army there, which they'll bring down for use down in the desert over here against the Brits. Then they sent their fleet over here. They've actually only got 2 cruisers there, one's German, and they sent it to the Russian fleet in Sevastopol, because essentially what they want to do is transcend units over there to create an amphibious invasion. So they wanted to see what they've got there, and it was actually a bluff on the contact table. I don't know what you do if the enemy has a complete bluff. It's just full of dummy counters. So I counted that obviously as contact value of 0. So they now know that the Russians have no fleet in the Black Sea. Unfortunately, it means they have to leave those units there. There's 3 bluff counters as well with that, which Russians still don't know about, I'm saying. So those units might get lost in attrition. Then essentially the main thing that's happening is, due to the failed Bulgaria alliance bid, at least at the moment, they're making a Trans-Caucasus expedition now. That's why these headquarters are moving along. The German one especially is going to help because of their extended command radius, because moving into the Russian rail net means we're going to have to leave 2 headquarters here just to connect supply into Erzurum, the Ottoman place, because the Ottoman command radii are so short. Then the unit will be able to move up here slowly, converting the rail track, the headquarters converting the rail track as it goes. Then they hope to take the oil in Baku, and perhaps eventually the oil over here. But by then they're hoping that Russia will be out of the war. That's going to take a long time to get up there. We will see exactly how, it depends how many impulses we get in the Middle East. Probably won't be a great number. So at least a year to get just to Baku through the mountains and so forth there. The Austro-Hungarians are sitting pretty in Serbia. They just moved to block whatever that is there. They reorganized 3 corps into 2 3-division corps there, and didn't do anything this. Okay, yeah, yes, they've essentially fortified their coastal positions. So Katara, Fiume, and Tri and Pola all have units in them for protection against possible amphibious invasion. I think I'll move this headquarters up to here. In the eastern front, let's see if we can get a better look at that. They're in rather dire straits. They had to give up the oil field here to move just so that they can, via this headquarters, into the rail net here, and the rail net goes up to here before it goes back, so it kind of pokes out into this pocket which the Russians are threatening. So if the Russians pinch off that, all of these units will not be able to be supplied unless they can trace across to the rail here, which actually they could do with a number of headquarters. But however, so they've left units entrenched here, they withdrew others back down here, and they're going to try, and these ones move from here, they're going to try and attack on the Russians there, or at least threaten them. Offer targets. It's interesting because they're entrenched. That would be a tough attack to make. Actually think about it, it won't make the attack, but anyway, these are going to withdraw that way just to stay in supply. So the Russians will effectively take one of the 3 Central Powers oil fields, which means the Germans have had to move around here to support the Austro-Hungarian flank.